May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our hope. Amen. Well, there's more. There's always more, and there will be more. One of the things about meeting weekly in a place where you have a particular reading of a certain number of verses is that it's a great opportunity to focus on something very specific in those few verses. But it doesn't always give you the whole picture, because the picture's always bigger, isn't it? Whether it's bigger in the moment or whether it's bigger in the context of the bigger story or even in the context of the biggest story, there's always more to it. And so I think sometimes it's important to not just focus on the few words that you're getting today, but on the whole story. So just imagine for a minute. Imagine that you are one of the followers of Jesus, the closest, the friends of Jesus. It's been a week, like up and down like a roller coaster. And it's time for the Passover meal. And so Jesus invites you all because you're like family to join him for this meal. And you do, and you have the Passover meal, and you have the food and everything, and then everyone's just kind of sitting around, and there's a few of you, so you're in smaller groups talking to each other, and you hear this gasp from the other side of the room, and you turn and look, and Jesus is washing somebody's feet. You gasp too. And then Jesus goes around the room and he washes everyone's feet, yours too. And he explains about how it's his role as a servant, because that's what we are for each other. We serve each other. It's important to recognize that, to learn that. And you're all kind of really caught off guard by this dramatic demonstration and everything, but things settle down a little bit, and you get back to chatting with the person next to you, and then you hear this bit of a ruckus on the other side of the room again, and you look, and Jesus is talking to Judas, and not your favorite of the guys, but he's kind of intense, and he storms out of the room and goes off. And then you hear Peter say, "I always got your back, Jesus, always." And Jesus just kind of shakes his head and says, Peter, before dawn tomorrow, you're going to deny knowing me 3 times. You are. And suddenly there's sort of an air in the room of, what's going on? Things were going so well, and then over the last week, it's just kind of, but you've always had this worry that Jesus was saying stuff that was annoying people in all the wrong places, and now you're worried. You heard somebody talking about betrayal, and Judas leaves. It sounds like Peter isn't really the biggest supporter of Jesus that you thought, or at least Jesus doesn't think that. How are you feeling now? And then Jesus looks at the room, and you can tell he knows what you're feeling. And he says, and you know what he's going to say. He's going to say that thing he says all the time. He's going to say, "Don't be afraid." You know it's coming. But he doesn't say that. He says something a little bit different. He says, "Don't let your heart be troubled." And suddenly it sounds even worse. Why would Jesus say that? Why like usually it just says, don't be afraid. We know what that means. God's with us. Yeah, we got that. We know what he means. Why would he say he's worried about our heart? And then he says that with God, there's a place for everyone. In fact, it's like being at home. And that's why he's going on ahead to welcome us, to make sure home is ready for us, because there's a place for us with God. And in the meantime, you guys know the way. And then Thomas, he's that one who is always asking the questions. He says, what way? And it's not like we weren't all thinking that. Come on. And Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to God but through the way. And you know what that way is. But how can we know that way? What exactly do you mean by that? Nobody wants to ask, but then Philip, he never gets stuff. Philip says, well, show us God then, if God is the way, and we'll get it. We'll be okay with that. And Jesus says, how is it that you guys have been with me this whole time and you still don't get it? How is it, like, remember, okay, maybe that's it. Maybe that's what I need to say, remember. Remember all that time that we spent together, all the things that we've done together? Remember all the things I tried to teach you? Because it's not just about learning to behave, it's about remembering. It's about reconnecting with that. And taking that into you and living that in the world. That's the way. The way is true and life-giving. The way is it's not behavior, it's life. It's living out what is truly in you, which is also in me, which is the spirit of life. It's God. That divine spirit is already in you. And the way is how we live that into the world. And you look around and you can see there's a few nodding heads. But then you ask a question which is on everybody's mind. If you're leaving us, Jesus, how will we know we're going the right way? How will we know that we're living true to the way? Like, who will guide us if you're not here? Isn't that the question that's on your mind every time you hear a story about Jesus saying, love your neighbor, love your enemy? Here's how you love. The Spirit is in you to do it. Here's how you do it. Okay, but how do I know I'm doing the right thing? How do I know? And so Jesus says, here's how you know. I won't be here in person. But you know that part about remembering? It really means reconnecting with those moments. And what will guide you is the very fact that the Spirit is in you. It's the spirit of truth. It's like having, well, Jesus would say advocate, but what he means is like a guide or a mentor. Someone who will help you understand when you are doing the right thing. And that someone is the Spirit that is already in you. It's that little voice that sometimes says, you know this is not the right thing. It's that voice that sometimes says, you see the wrong thing happening, you need to do something. And then when that other little voice says, I don't know, that seems kind of scary, it's too much work, that same voice is going to say, no, it isn't too much work, you must do it. Don't be afraid. Oh, that sounds like Jesus. Yes, it does. Don't be afraid, because the Spirit is with you. This is why your heart shouldn't be troubled that I'm going. Be sad, Jesus will say, that I'm going. Sure. In fact, if you aren't, I'd be concerned about that. But in your heart, know that I am always with you. Just as God is always with you. I've been showing you God. That's why I say God is in me and I am in you now, because we've shared those experiences. You remember, you reconnect with those experiences that show you what it means. Experience you what it means to love, to have empathy, to have compassion, to have kindness, to speak out for others who are suffering and being oppressed or feeling injustice. And when you hear that absolutely understandable, very human voice saying, I'm scared, or I don't really understand, that's when the Spirit will remind you of what you should remember and know that you must, and that you shouldn't be afraid because God is with you. So when you see people being oppressed or hurt, when you see people being treated unfairly, without equity, and that's not the same as equality. Equity means we have what we need, not that we all get the same thing, because we don't all need the same thing. This is why it's so important to understand, I think Jesus would say, that the Spirit is in you to live out. Is because you, as an individual, live it the way you live it in your life. We can collectively gather and talk about that, and hopefully encourage and support each other, nurture each other. Really good thing to think about on Mother's Day. We can. But we are all going to follow our own journeys. And on those journeys, we're going to encounter moments where we have doubt and we're afraid. We're going to encounter moments where we know darn sure what the right way is, but we might be afraid to take it. The Spirit is there to remind us, to remember all these stories, these experiences, this time we've had with Jesus, and what Jesus is trying to show us. There are so many ways in the world that we desperately need to find that Spirit in each of us and share it. In our own little world and in the bigger world that's around us, there are so many ways in which we need to pray for others to find that same Spirit. That's what Jesus is trying to say. He's going to sum it up. He's going to sum it up in a piece of the story that sadly this year you don't get to hear in the lectionary. But he's going to sum it up. Love one another as I have loved you. That's what this is all about. That's what this whole speech is about. It's about how that works. Love one another. Know that the Spirit is in you to do that. Remember all of the experiences we've had together, the stories you've heard, the stories we've shared, those moments, and the moments that you felt Jesus in your life, in your own life, and the power to live that love with others. And all the moments you've seen Jesus in the people around you. Because that's what it's all about. That's what this whole piece of Jesus' story is about. Understanding what the whole story is about. And what that's about is how we live with each other. How we live with the Spirit that is in us and share it with each other because we are connected in that love. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it feels impossible. But we aren't alone. We aren't. Because the Spirit of life is in each of us.